Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome if you're new. I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to another video. In today's video I thought we would sit down and discuss some of the books I've recently read as well as what I'm currently reading and what I'm planning to read next. So kind of like a little book update. Obviously I've been in a major slump. I don't know how many times I've said this before, but I just feel like it gives a lot of context into my reading journey in 2022. So I've been in a major slump since the end of March and have been in it, I want to say, until the end of September. I was reading in July, August and in September, but I feel like only now in the middle of October am I fully back into reading, like wanting to read like over 100 pages a day, wanting to get absorbed into different stories. So I'm very, very thankful that I'm back into my reading mojo, and that has also allowed me to venture back into Bookstagram, and I'm really, really enjoying creating reels and feed posts again. So a little self plug, if you want to follow me on Instagram to find out instant book updates, reading updates, life updates, then definitely go follow me over on Instagram. It's always linked down below and I will leave the handle on screen now for you. But at the end of September I wanted to try and finish 2 summary reads before we officially welcomed autumn and the colder months into our lives. So the first book that I managed to squeeze in, which kind of shouted summer to me, was Summer at Shell Cottage by Lucy Diamond. This was the 4th Lucy Diamond book I've read and I'm trying to get through all her backlist, so I'm glad I managed to tick this one off the list. It's personally my least favourite of Lucy Diamond, but I did still give it a 3.5 stars. Really, really enjoying it. Just kind of didn't give me anything special. It basically follows 3 generations of the same family who spend every summer at their cottage in Devon called Shell Cottage, hence the name. And our main character, Olivia, has just lost her husband rather suddenly, and she's kind of fearing going back to the cottage that they grew up going to every single summer because it'll be the first time without her husband. And then they also have 2 children. They have Freya and Robert, and you also follow their perspective as they're grieving their father, but Freya is also struggling with alcoholism and Robert has this really big secret that is about to tear the family apart. You also follow their children. So you follow Robert's daughter Molly and you also follow Freya's daughter Libby. So you have a lot of generational problems. So you have some secrets that are being held close to the heart, and you also go through kind of the grieving process of this entire family going back to somewhere that they really find fond memories of their husband and father. So it was like a very kind of deep dive into family dynamic, which I love. I love family dynamic, which is why I love books like this, like women's fiction about families, because it just gives you 500 to 600 pages of just pure family dynamic, character growth, character development, which is my favorite thing about books. I particularly loved Freya's development as she kind of came to terms with her alcohol problem and then kind of really fought with her family and her friends' support to fight it, and I really, really enjoyed that kind of character arc within her. There are also some trigger warnings obviously for grief with the husband recently dying, obviously Freya with her alcohol problem, and also some teacher-student relationship issues with the younger kind of generation in this family as well. So there's a lot going on in this book. I really enjoyed spending some time with the Tarrant family, kind of figuring out all their secrets, and I really liked how it was written. I think the plot was done really well, like the pacing of the plot was done really well in the way all the secrets kind of got revealed in their own time and had their own space to breathe rather than them all being revealed at the end as like one big climax. There was like lots of mini climax throughout the book, which I really, really enjoyed. And overall I just had a fun time reading it. I'm glad I read it in the summer months and I'm glad I can tick off another Lucy Diamond book off my TBR. The last book I wanted to squeeze in with the summer months and read while it was still sunny outside, although it is sunny outside today and we're in the middle of October, but that was Rise to the Sun by Leah Johnson. This is your typical YA sapphic romance book with a twist, which is that it's set at a music festival, which is what kind of drew me to the book in the first place. I love concerts, I love live music. Never been to a festival before, but I thought this romance would be like right up my alley. However, it did kind of fall a little bit short for me. It basically follows our 2 main characters, Olivia and Tony. This book is told in dual perspectives, so you get both sides of the romance. This is Tony's first visit to the music festival since her father died. Once again, this book does kind of discuss grief, so if that's not for you, then I would advise to skip this book. But it's the first time going back to the music festival without his presence, and she wants to take part in the competition where a lot of different people audition and then they get to go up on stage at the end of the festival and sing with the headline act. So this is what Tony wants to get out of the festival. Olivia, on the other hand, wants to win the kind of apple scavenger hunt competition of this music festival, which is a tradition in this music festival. And they both need each other to make their kind of dreams come true as part of this kind of weekend festival. Tony needs an additional person to audition because by the time she gets around to auditioning, all the solo act places have been filled, and so therefore the only way to enter this competition for Tony is to go as a duet. So Olivia agrees to sing with her on stage so she can audition for this competition. And Olivia, on the other hand, needs help in finding all the apples, and because Tony has gone every single year with her father, she knows the festival grounds inside out and knows how to win the apple scavenger hunt competition. So they need each other to kind of win their own things, and that's how the romance ensues from there. This book wasn't anything special for me. It was your typical YA romance with the typical YA drama, which I wasn't a massive fan of. I found Olivia rather annoying. She would keep making promises to her best friend that she went along with, that it would be like a best friend weekend, and then she would just kept getting swept up with Tony and kind of forgot about her best friend. And it was really irritating to see because she made this promise to her best friend that she was going to be with her by her side this whole weekend, and she just keeps shoving her aside, spending time with Tony instead, and just kind of leaving her best friend with Tony's best friend. So they did make a good kind of like foursome, but Olivia made this promise and she just didn't stick with it, and it just kind of irritated me, to be fair. And the thing that really kind of nagged at me is there was no real motivation behind why Olivia wanted to win this apple scavenger hunt competition thing. It was basically just kind of a plot device to keep the story moving along, but there was no kind of like end to it because there was no real motivation for Olivia to even win this thing, and it just felt like it was there as an afterthought with the author, and it wasn't my kind of like favourite plot device ever. Unfortunately, I have now read both of Leah Johnston's books, You Should See Me in a Crown and Rise to the Sun, and I just don't think this author is for me, unfortunately. I can definitely see a younger audience these books being really, really helpful for obviously the diversity and LGBTQ plus side to things, but for me personally, I just think the books are better off for a younger audience. Me now being 25, I am definitely gravitating away from YA. There are still some YA books in there that I love, but I just don't think Leah Johnston's writing is for me. I gave this a 3 stars. However, flipping the switch, the next book I read was House on the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I always say, did I say in the Cerulean Sea or on the Cerulean Sea? It's In the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I put this book off for so long because when I heard people talk about it, I heard fantasy. Fantasy, it's a fantasy, it's a fantasy, fantasy. And I was like, well, I don't read fantasy, so why would I care for this book? So I put it off. When did it come out? Like 2020. So it came out 2 years ago. Everyone was raving about it. Everyone was giving it 5 stars, and I was like, nah, this book isn't for me. This book is not for me. It's a fantasy. I won't get on with it. And then I was trying to get out of my reading slump, and I was like, maybe the reason I can't get out of this reading slump is because I need to switch up the genre. So I went into my local Waterstones and I brought 2 books outside of my typical genre. I brought this one, and I also brought a book called A Magic Seat in Poison, which I'll put a picture on screen here. I haven't read that one yet. But I decided to start with this one, and oh my god, am I glad I started with this one. I can see why everyone loves this book so much. It was so cozy, like the perfect book to kind of start autumn with. Oh my god, it was just so precious. It was so heartwarming. This book basically follows our main character, Linus. He's kind of like a care worker for magical children in this world, and he gets put on an assignment, go and inspect this kind of really isolated orphanage, like care home for magical children who are kind of really troublesome, as the government in this world class them as. And then Linus goes, realises they're not troublesome or dangerous at all, and they are just all kids with magical powers they're trying to figure out. And oh my god, it was so precious. I loved Linus as a character. I loved his character development. Every time I love a book, I guarantee the praise is going to be because the characters were brilliant and the character arcs were amazing and the character development was incredible, because that's what I love in books, if you didn't know. I love characters. Give me anything as long as the characters are good. Yes, this book is about magical children in a magical place being looked after because they are struggling with how to deal with their magical powers, but the underlining messages in this that you can take away from a personal level about being inclusive to anyone and everyone you come in contact with, never judging a book by its cover, like all those sorts of meanings that you need to hear are in this book. And it was just so well done. The balance between contemporary and fantasy, and the fact that there are hidden messages in this book, and the fantasy elements with the magical powers. It was just a really perfect balance for anyone who doesn't read a lot of fantasy and reads mainly contemporary, i.e. me, this book was perfection. I absolutely loved it. I gave it a 5 stars. I just really connected to Chauncey on a personal level. I think it's because he was so passionate about becoming this bellhopper, and that's all he thought about, that's all he wanted to be, that was where he put his 100% of his attention and like time. I feel that when it comes to my obsessions and my fangirling, like, and to be seen through a character who has that much of a passion for one single thing was just like really eye-opening, in the fact that like I'm a Disney adult, yes, I 100% admit that, but to see clarity in that, and that it's okay to have a passion for something that is so harmless to anyone else, was really nice to see in a fantasy book. I was never expecting to feel related or feel kind of connected to any of the characters in this book because it was fantasy, and then to see this character who had such a passion for one thing like I do was really, really nice. I really, really enjoyed it, and he was my favourite character for sure. So yeah, I gave this a 5 star. What can you say? It was amazing. Like 100% worth the hype, absolutely incredible. Definitely recommend it if you are kind of on the fence about reading it. I definitely would give it a go. It's so easy to read, so digestible, and yeah, 100% worth the hype. And now we're moving on to a library book I just recently finished, and another one that was completely worth the hype, and that was The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Once again, I'm trying to kind of switch things up and not always gravitate towards contemporary and romance, even though that is my favourite genre and will always be my favourite genre. I do kind of want to like dip my toe into other genres because I do enjoy all genres when I actually kind of enjoy the characters. Shock horror. So I read The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes as a library loan on my phone, and I gave it a 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. It did take me a little while to get into it, about 100 to 150 pages for me to get into it, but I just kind of anticipated that because I knew it was a trilogy, and I knew this kind of mystery, like overarching mystery, was going to continue across all 3 books. So I was kind of expecting a slower burn in terms of figuring out what the mystery was, how the characters were connected, and all that sort of thing. So I was expecting it, and it did continue to keep me on edge because the chapters were so short. Can we just praise the author for writing really short chapters? Because I love short chapters, and the way the book was paced with the short chapters I think was really well done, and always kept me intrigued, always kept me wanting to read more and find out kind of what the main kind of end point of this story was. And yes, I have already put on hold the second book in the trilogy because I cannot wait to find out what happens. I feel like it's similar to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy in a way that every book wraps up its own individual mystery, but there is also an overarching kind of plot line. I definitely feel like they're very similar in that aspect. So although the plot and the mystery for book 1 is kind of finished and done, and you got like a good answer, it left you on a cliffhanger for another mystery to obviously be told in the second book. So I have put a hold on that one, and I'm very, very excited to read it. Hopefully it'll come in just in time for the end of October for Halloween, because I think that would be the perfect book to read on Halloween, because it is a Monday night, so I'll have no plans, and I'm very, very excited to just sit down with a cozy book. So hopefully that will come in time. And the book I just finished this morning was Watch Us Rise by Renee Watson and Ellen Hagen, I want to say is how you pronounce the author's name. So it is a dual written story, and I think the way that they wrote it together was really fluid. You never kind of felt like each chapter was a jump in a different author's writing style. I think they kind of worked really well together. It basically follows our... I never actually said what The Inheritance Game was about, but I was like wondering why this was such a short kind of chat about Inheritance Games, because I didn't tell you what it's about. It basically follows our main character, I've forgotten her name. It follows our main character who manages to inherit a dead man's kind of entire inheritance, and his family gets nothing, but this stranger who just comes onto the scene, the main character, gets everything, and the mystery follows why is she getting all the inheritance and his family isn't. There you go, that's The Inheritance Games. Watch Us Rise, however, is about our 2 main characters, Jasmine and Chelsea, who are very feminist, they're very empowering, and their school is kind of sexist, not kind of inclusive to their standard and to society's standard. So they try and make a change, and their school is very, very adamant on having kind of after school activities. So everyone has to join an after school club. And these two girls are part of their own clubs. Chelsea is part of a poetry club and Jasmine is part of an acting club. And they're both happy until they start receiving sexist and racist comments from students and teachers within that club. So they both kind of say, no, I'm not dealing with this anymore. They go to their principal. They're like, we're quitting these clubs, we want to start our own club. We want to start a Write Like a Girl club. And they start a club about female empowerment and being a feminist and what that means, and kind of raising voices of the minority communities in their local area. And it's a very empowering, thought-provoking read for sure. It gets a little bit political. It gets a little bit political at times, with kind of how infodumpy the authors were in the context and some of the information that they were letting on to the readers. But overall, it had a greater good to it, so you could kind of like let it go. I was still learning so much with the parts that were a bit more infodumpy than others. I was still learning things about people I'd never heard of before, famous kind of poets or activists that kind of had a truth and meaning to them. So I still learned a lot even though it was infodumpy. So if that's not what you like, maybe skip this book. But if you don't mind it, I do really recommend this book. I gave it 4 stars. I'm on a roll right now with what I'm reading and I just don't want it to stop, to be fair. So fingers crossed, my next read is just as good, and that will be Adult by Emma Jane Unsworth, which is a book about our main character, Jenny, who can't afford her mortgage, who is about to get dumped by her best friend and spends all day online stalking women with picture perfect lives. And it's about her struggling to basically live her late 20s to early 30s life. And if you guys have been following me for a while, you know that is a complete buzzword for me and I'm super excited to read it. I'll be buddy reading it with my friend Z, who is part of this community as well. So I'm really excited to see what we both think of this book, and I'm really hoping that I absolutely love it because I'm on a roll with 4 and 5 stars at the minute. So fingers crossed that will continue. And the next book that I want to read after Adult is Beauty of Your Face by Sarah Mustava, and this basically follows a school shooting. So it's going to be a heavier read compared to what I've recently read, but I'm really intrigued to read it. It's been on my TBR for a while. If you want to know more about it, then it was part of my October TBR, so I'll link that video up above and down below for you guys. But that kind of wraps up today's video. Let me know what you've recently read. Have you rated any books 5 stars at the minute? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a massive thumbs up and subscribe to see future content from me. I do anything from bookish videos like this and lifestyle content, so make sure you subscribe so don't miss any future uploads. And without further ado, I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.